first time, I think, to figure it out. Well, those are all excellent stories from the trenches. That was the juicy stuff I wanted to get into. Well, now I want to ask you guys about the indie scene. How do you feel about your relationship to, air quotes, the indie scene? If such a thing even exists. Do you feel yourself part of the indie scene, Rob?
Hugely. I mean, everybody has a different definition of what the indie scene is or whether it exists, but what I can tell you is that there's no way I would be where I am today without the knowledge and contributions and discussions from a lot of people in this room and a lot of other indie developers online. I mean, the indie developers are so approachable, and especially when you come from a AAA background, it's really different. You come from this like AAA background where everything's super secret because companies know that they're all competing for the $60 blockbuster this summer. You're going to buy one game and that's it, and they want it to be yours. Indies don't operate on those assumptions. We work in an environment where people are going to buy several of our 5 or 10 or $1 games, depending on what platform we're looking at. And we're not really competing with each other. So we're perfectly happy giving each other assistance and being open and transparent about our processes. So yeah, there is an indie community and it's amazing.
And Steph, I mean, your daily life has kind of become about that, given the setup of your office.
Yeah, so I moved to San Francisco in last year, and we started doing just a lot of things, just working at home by themselves, and started just going to coffee shops and work together, just showing out stuff, and having some sort of social interaction.
You would go and hang out in coffee shops together as a group and work there.
Yeah. And it was working, and so we thought, hey, let's make this a thing. So let's get an office, let's share it. And it's been like really happy with that. And so I'm sharing an office with Ron and Goo. He's
Ron Carmel.
What's that?
Ron Carmel.
Yeah, Ron Carmel.
Who is also helping to organise Indie Fund now.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. That's the moderator's job.
The Indie Fund, for anyone who, can you expand a little bit more on Indie Fund?
Actually, we should do that.
Well, I hope I don't mess it up. Ron's not here, is he? Basically, Ron and a group of other independent game developers have put together a fund of money to help support new upcoming independent game developers. I think that's not a bad brief summary.
Yeah, I knew you could do it. Yeah, so I'm sharing an office with 3 other indies. So it's Ron Carmel, David Howland, who did the art for Gray, who's a really talented guy, and Derek Hughes, who's doing this for London. So all 3 of them are very talented, and it's a back and forth of ideas and anger management. It's great.
So that social context, having other people physically present, even though they're working on different stuff, that's been important.
Yeah, that's been really, really important. And,
it's the social pressure to not browse the web all day, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the 2nd floor, so they usually don't see me.
So you could if you wanted to.
Spend the whole day just doing something else. But yeah, and I don't know, they're great. The indie scene is amazing. I think that everybody's kind of living the dream of creating their own ideas, and so they're, also tremendously fulfilled as people, just happy and generous.
Now, both you and Rob are in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Andre, you're down here in LA. I think maybe because of the geographical difference between the Bay Area and Los Angeles, you have a bit of a different experience.
Yeah. I mean, for me, there's definitely an indie scene, but it's something that's more of a fraternity. It seems like all the guys that I mentioned were guys who have been at the top of not even just indie scene, but they made a lot of progress in games and money, all that stuff. They've been out there in the market, and it's almost like if you're not in that capacity of gaming, then you're not really recognized as So it's been difficult. Even when we put out Pawn, we sent little emails to indie blogs and things like that. A lot of them just shunned it off until I think like Rock Paper Shotgun was the first like big, or I forget which website. But then after that, it kind of became a little bigger. But the first few days, or the first day or so, there's no love from the indie community because we were these unknown guys, even though we made this thing from our own apartment rooms and things like that. And so, to me, it's all kind of out of reach. Like it's a culture that's out of touch as far as like the population. It's very, I don't want to say elitist because they're not like bad guys. You know, like,
but I think I know what you're talking. In terms of like getting the story about your game kicked off, I can kind of relate to that. I've been on different teams at different times that had sort of more or less traction in the minds of the media sphere, and so I know, yeah. And I just wanted to ask you, not to draw attention to it, but just to highlight the fact that different people have different experiences of this context, which we all agree is awesome and really friendly and welcoming.
Yeah, yeah. I've never had a bad experience with it. Yeah, it's hard to be considered in that culture.
Tyler, I know you've had a pretty good time. I mean, like, there's a lot of young game makers like yourself around, and the Newgrounds sort of scene that gives you a lot of community and context.
Yeah.
You got anything to add other than awesome?
Yeah, awesome, pretty much. There's definitely an indie scene out there. I mean, we're kind of sitting in it right now, so yeah. And there's a lot of like mailing lists and forums about it, and everybody sort of is out in the indie scene, at least, is out to help each other rather than compete each other, as Rob was saying. Because you can see that in all like these bundles and experimental business models that are out. I mean, you wouldn't see these 5 completely unrelated games bundled together in like a mainstream industry.
Right, yeah.
Or the mainstream games, because that's just, they're trying to compete with each other.
Yeah.
So it's very friendly and very helpful for people like me who don't really have much experience yet to know all the other people here that do and are willing to help. It's been like hugely influential in helping me get up to where I am right now.
So to round us off and thinking about the incredible diversity of games and game makers, Dan, I want to ask you for your take on the idea of like an indie scene.
I think it's definitely there. I think it tends to be, it is, I guess, I'm really socially awkward.
Join the club then.
That's my way of games.
I know I seem very comfortable and confident, but inside I'm like this far away from bursting into tears.
So kind of like, no, I don't feel part of an indie scene, but then also I don't really feel like I'm a proper academic, I don't really feel like I'm a proper game developer. I never just sort of, there's a new thing which is kind of happening that's quite European, which has been driven by Tale of Tales, which is really exciting, called the Not Games Forum, which is a bunch of people who are fall broadly within the category of indie, but have a particular kind of thematic or aesthetic focus on the type of things they make. They're not puzzles or platformers, they're not really art games, they're very narrative and very mood driven. And so Tale of Tales are kind of driven together this new forum, and I think it includes sort of people that are doing really well commercially, like Frictional, who made Penumbra and Amnesia Dark Descent, and it includes very sort of one-off makers. And I think there's a kind of a community there which is a lot smaller than the indie community, because it's broadly people who have developed the same kinds of things as opposed to being defined by their kind of market position, if you know what I mean. And that's, so I guess maybe there. But I mean also a lot of it, the kind of the indie scene is, it's very kind of American. There isn't a European indie kind of scene in the same way. There's lots of European indies, but it's an American scene. So, I mean.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, because I do tend to think a little bit geographically. There's an Australian scene, something for European scene, but I agree with you. I mean, I grew up in the era of late 80s indie music, And what happened there was almost exactly the same. There's this iconic tape called C86. I think it was the Melody, no, NME put out. And it sort of inspired a whole generation of music. And we called for a month in the middle of 1986, we called all of that music indie music. And then the next month, we invented like 12 new subgenre names to refer to like shambling bands and twee indie and all of these different genres. And I think that we're in this same kind of transitional period where we'll start to talk about not games and art games and, you know, sort of indie casual and all kinds of interesting stuff. So it's exciting times.
I hope that happens. We're hearing a panel and Hans is here next to dear Esther, and it's almost like two different mediums. But
Five, actually. I would identify kind of 5 different genres.
Yeah, we just like bundle it into this easy way.
Yeah, well, we'll get busy with that. We'll start plotting some new micro-genre names. Well, we've almost run out of time. We've only got 3 minutes left on the clock. We don't have time really for questions, I'm afraid. But like I say, just come mod us afterwards, and we'll get into it and mix it up. I do want to ask you guys to give us kind of a unicorn chaser to all of the interesting talk. Tell us just quickly about what's the best thing that's happened to you this last year. Tyler?
Yeah, I told you that already. I dropped out of school, moved to San Diego, and now working full time on stuff I want to work on.
That's perfect. That's awesome. Dan?
It's always getting fan email. Always have people who are taking the game seriously, taking the time to travel to write to you, and especially with our games, which are quite convoluted, getting kind of like streams of interpretive emails of people just wanting to talk about your games. That's the way to do it. You know, it's just great to feel that actually you've made a connection with people.
That's the best player experience.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Rob?
I have started work on a new game that I'm extremely excited about. There's kind of no basis for comparison. I said that I'd offer a little bit of a teaser, so here's the deal. The game mechanics that I'm working with, we're rendering frames on a server offline so that this is accessible over the web, and we're presenting those frames to users 1 frame every 6 hours. So consider this a mental exercise, come to me with your ideas, and I will tell you how close you are and you can push it back to us.
Just because it takes 6 hours to render 1 frame.
No, it is an alternate reality game, so there is a reason that it takes 6 hours to give you that image.
I'm actually
not live.
It will not be on
My OCD has me actually trying to work out the frames per second. It'd be like 0.0000. Andre, best thing that happened to you?
Well, there's 2. There was the whole pond attention that we got and put that out. That was great. Both the negative and positive feedback we got was awesome. And then the code name deal with PlayStation Home, getting products out of that. So, finding people business up and running.
When you make something that people either love or hate, you know you're succeeding. That's magic.
They really hate it.
It really interesting. It takes a little bit of passion to hate something.
It's free, you finish in 5 minutes, so everybody should go play Pond.
Yeah, they should. It's great.
Excellent stuff.
I guess it was having Faraway at Gamma Nights. It was a really great experience having I didn't know if the game was working. I just had played tested with 3 people and it was working with 1 person, And at the game, during the night, I saw people coming to the game and losing right away, but going to the back of the line to play again and getting better, and going back and getting better again. That was a really great feeling to try to get in that setting.
That's great to hear. That's another sign that your game is succeeding. People immediately want another go. Well, I want to thank you all for coming and spending time with us today. I want to thank you all for coming and spending time with us this afternoon. I hope this has been useful and interesting to you. It was when John and I were sharing the Google document that had this schedule information in